Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our third edition of Tough Talks. Today, Magda Reynolds is going to be talking to us about attachment, what that is, and how it affects human behavior. Magda, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Magda, can you explain to our listeners what is attachment?
Hello, everyone. So, child attachment, if we look at children now, child attachment is the way in which we emotionally bond to our primary caregiver. So, the way we see the world, a primary caregiver would normally be a parent, but it doesn't need to be a parent. It can be anybody who takes up the role of primarily looking after the child. So foster parents, adopted parents, grandparents, whoever is the primary caregiver, that is the one who would then build the attachment with the child.
Okay, so talk us through the different types of attachments that we can see in children.
So there was a prominent psychologist called Mary Ainsworth, and she did something called the strange situation test, which led us to discover the attachment styles. So there is secure attachment, in which when a primary caregiver leaves, a child is a bit distressed. They can carry on with what they need to do. When the primary caregiver returns, they are again a bit distressed, but they can be easily calmed down, and then they're happy again, and can carry on with life. Then we also noticed anxious ambivalent attachment. So this looks like the child is very distressed when the caregiver leaves. They can't easily be comforted when the caregiver returns. So there's a lot of anxiety, fear of abandonment, difficulty with trust in that. Then there's avoidant attachment. So emotionally distant or unresponsive. So very little outward distress when the caregiver leaves or returns. Would ignore the person, would potentially just carry on playing or invest in what is the environment rather than the other people. So this is somebody who would be a bit emotionally distant, would suppress emotions, and would struggle with building trust and intimacy with other people. And then we also have disorganized. So this is where something is frightening or abusive or very neglectful. So there's contradictory behaviors here. So you can be either very clingy or very distant. So this child struggles with emotional regulation. There's a higher risk for mental health, stress, and problems that come there. And then also very chaotic relationships. Like then we love each other very deeply. Then we're away from each other completely. So it's very much, as the name says, very disorganized.
Okay, so basically a child will develop one of these attachment styles as the dominant style that they have as a result of the way that they've been parented, the way that they've been raised, whoever is raising them. And this has implications for their confidence levels, how they relate to other people, how comfortable they are about being left by themselves for short periods, and how they respond to people coming and going in their lives. Okay. So what is the implication of this for human behavior when it comes to relationships? If a child ended up developing a certain attachment style as a result of their childhood experiences, what do we see in adults that can tell us this person was neglected as a child, or this child grew up in an abusive home, or this child was parentified, where the parent made the child fulfill parenting functions and the child ended up looking after the parent? Can you talk us through a bit about that?
So if you think about it, that first bond that we build with our primary caregiver, that is then the model we have for all our other relationships. So then are you able to make friends, lasting friendships? Are you able to build romantic relationships if that's something you want to pursue? Are these things you are able to do? And then what happens if you can't? And what happens, when there's problems there? So what a securely attached child looks like as an adult is this person is secure in their attachment as an adult as well. So they're very comfortable with both being intimate with others and then having their independence. They trust naturally, they communicate well, and they usually have healthy boundaries and can regulate their emotions. Obviously, nobody is perfect, so there will be spikes in all of these things, but in general, these are people who can navigate through life quite successfully in terms of relationships. Then the anxious ambivalent child turns into an anxious preoccupied adult. So This means that this person is very needy, and they depend a lot on relationships. However, they're also very worried about rejection and fear of abandonment. So they may actually just create that themselves so that they can prove themselves right. And, oh, this person is going to leave me anyway. So no matter how much I cling to you, you are going to leave me. And obviously, when we cling to something and hold on that hard, people tend to want to get out of there because it's not comfortable being held that tightly anyway. And, if you look at teenagers or just, kids, when they're in primary school or high school, they can hold on to friends like this as well. And then they're very offended that, why is my friend leaving me? All my friends are leaving me. There must be something wrong with me. So this affects self-esteem as well. And then the avoidant child would turn into a dismissive avoidant adult. So the child would be emotionally distant and would avoid closeness. Like, we're not bothered with other people, really. We can independently make our way through life. So the adult is hyper independent, and they very much dismiss or downplay the importance of relationships. This is a person who would feel, I'm fine on my own, relationships complicate things, that type of thing. Struggle with emotional closeness and vulnerability. So very difficult to open up to people and to trust them that much. And they would suppress feelings and avoid conflict, because that's also a problem. We're not going to get into a conflict situation here. And then the disorganized child would turn into a fearful or avoidant / disorganized adult. So the child is disorientated, fearful, very inconsistent. Today we love you, tomorrow we hate you. The adult would then want intimacy, but would be very, very afraid of getting hurt. And yes, we are all afraid of getting hurt, but this is much deeper than that. This is almost to the point of it interferes with how you function in relationships. Often has unresolved trauma or trust issues. There's, I want to be close to you, but I also don't want to be close to you. So I can give you a little bit of closeness and then I freak myself out completely, and then where you don't see me for a week. So these are the things, that is how it would develop into adult styles and what we would see in adults behavior-wise.
So what you're describing, I think we can all identify people that we know, friends and family members who present with these types of behaviors. There's kind of like a pattern. And while it's not 100% predictive, we can identify people that we know who get into relationships that they really want to be with this person, but then they sabotage that relationship by being jealous and clingy and over-dependent, and then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. We also know those people who are very emotionally closed off. So I think this is useful information so that we can contextualize what is going on with the various people that we encounter, and we can see this is why this person might be behaving in this way. And it does give some explanation as to how we can contextualize their behavior and its impact on us, and also then have a realistic assessment of what we could do in that relationship. If you are in a relationship, let's say with an emotionally distant person, and you keep pressurizing them to open up and talk about their feelings, you might actually cause them to leave because you're creating all of this discomfort for them. Other things might need to happen to help that person become more open, but it's not something that you as the partner could necessarily pressurize this person to do. It might not go down so well.
No.
So how would you, because NICRO works with a lot of adults and children in conflict with the law, how do you see attachment issues playing out in the clients that you see coming to NICRO for services? They've committed an offence, the court has referred them to NICRO for anger management or road rage or common assault or domestic violence. How do you see attachment playing out with those people?
Look, and this can even play into the things like theft, or one of what we would deem as a society as smaller thing. Because when you do the assessment and you sit with people and they will explain to you, yes, I had a good relationship with my parents, but if you want them to then explain to you what that means, what does good relationship mean to them, then it meant that yes, they were provided for, but they wouldn't necessarily share any type of emotional distress with their parents. They wouldn't count on them for emotional support. They wouldn't necessarily confide in a member of their family. There seems to be no real primary caregiver for the emotions. So they could never really trust anybody with that, or there was a lot of boundary crossing or maybe abuse. And then you get people who want to please people to such an extent that they maybe wind up staying in abusive relationships, or maybe get talked into stealing something. Or like, for example, there was a case where somebody needed to exchange an item for a family member, and they so deeply wanted to please this family member that when they couldn't exchange the thing and get the goods that the person wanted, they tried to steal the goods. And that literally went on this disappointment from this one figure. And that is what we see in terms of attachment. So a securely attached person wouldn't have felt that need, wouldn't have gone down that route. So it's something we definitely have a look at in the assessment space, and then see what we could recommend that can help, and help them move to a state of a different attachment style.
Yeah. So talking about changing attachment styles, things that have happened to you in your childhood, you can't go back in time and change them. So how would you work on that with somebody who has, let's say, disorganized or anxious attachment styles? How would you work with that person as an adult to kind of improve their behavior and make things a bit better for them?
So the first thing would obviously be to identify which attachment style you have. The first step in all problems is acknowledging there's a problem. Because a lot of people find that very difficult. I don't want to identify that there's something wrong with how I attach to people, because the inherent message there is then, my parents were perhaps bad. And that's not what we're saying, because parents are also people just like everybody else. So there are things that they could have done very unknowingly. And it could have been the best that they have at the time, but now there's a situation when you still need to resolve it. And then we need to challenge the beliefs that informs that attachment style. So is it that you feel you're not good enough? Is it that you feel you're not worthy of the time? What are the beliefs that you hold that is key to this attachment style? Then we need to start looking at your relationships. Which relationships are you holding that is proving you right? So yes, this is the way I am. So this is how people react to me. And which relationships are actually secure relationships? Often a very quick and easy way to identify it, which relationship scares the person the most, those would be the ones that are secure. Because for a person who is not securely attached, a secure relationship would be very scary, because there are so many things that can go wrong. And or if a person was disorganized, has the disorganized attachment style, a secure relationship would be insanely boring, because they crave that excitement and the up and down that they are used to. And then, regulation, to teach your nervous system that it can calm down and be safe in a different type of situation. Practicing it in. So a lot of communication work, a lot of boundary setting, a lot of practicing to be vulnerable, small steps, baby steps. It doesn't have to be the whole elephant at once. It can literally be one bite at a time. And then, of course, therapy, so that you have the space, and not just the space, but what happens in therapy is you can build that type of attachment with the person that you're sitting with in therapy. That can be the mirror then for what this type of relationship is supposed to look like. You can practice those communication skills and everything within that space, and you can use that as a template to then go outside and practice that with other people.
Can you just jump back to what you said earlier about a secure attachment is the most scary for some people because a lot of things can go wrong with it? Does that mean that, because that might have sounded like it's really problematic, there's so many things that can go wrong with it, but was it more you were saying that they're starting to lose a lot?
Yes.
If something goes wrong with that relationship, so they're scared of
yes.
Maybe asserting a boundary or standing up for themselves because they might lose this one good thing.
Yes. So obviously in a secure relationship, the risk of losing that is so much higher than with all the others, that it comes with a lot of fear. So people tend to just exit that quickly, because the power in the relationship lies with the one who cares less. So they exit themselves quickly so that they're the one who cares less and they don't wind up getting hurt.
So they're going to abandon first rather than be abandoned.
Be abandoned, yes. So there's a lot of fear that comes with that. And then obviously it can be very boring as well. If you're used to incredible highs and incredible lows, in the disorganized style than somebody who's secure and has routine and can communicate. It's boring. So you also need to learn that there's actually safety and excitement and things in that as well.
Okay. Perfect. Okay, so what advice could you give to somebody who maybe can't afford to go into therapy or just is a bit scared of going into therapy, and they recognize themselves in some of the things that you've been talking about here? What practical advice could you give someone like that so that they can start working on these issues and try to build more secure relationships bit by bit, as you said, with other people?
I'd say, first of all, see which attachment style matches best with you so that you see which one it is. That you can identify the behaviors there that are problematic, that you can start identifying those behaviors in your life and maybe find healthier things to replace them with. You could potentially see who's problematic in your life and try a bit of boundary setting or those type of things. You can journal about it. You can voice note yourself with WhatsApp. So there's quite a few things now that you can do instead of traditional therapy. Traditional therapy would obviously be the greatest space for this type of thing, but there are workarounds where you could journal, you can do a lot of reading. Do not fall into the pop psychology hole for this. Look at real credible sources where people speak about attachment and attachment work, because there's quite a few exercises that you could also do to build attachment, like certain actions. For example, if you sit and you wash somebody's hands, or you have cream that you apply to their hands or their feet. There are certain things that you can do that are set out that also helps to build that bond with people and with children. So just make sure it's legitimate sources that you are looking at.
Yeah. Well, I think we'll put some links in the description of this video for people to go and learn a bit more about attachment. We're almost out of time, so would you like to say anything to wrap up and just to consolidate the message that you wanted to share here today with our viewers?
So basically, just that your attachment style is not set for life. You can change it. It takes an incredible amount of work, but it can change. It can move. You don't have to be the one type of attachment style all through your life. So if you feel that something is not working for you, read up a bit, see what you can do, and make a change.
Thank you very much, Magda, for taking the time to share this very useful, very interesting information for us. That's all we have time for today. So thank you everyone for joining in, and we will see you again in our next video. Thank you.
Thank you.